Right. Hello, everybody. Again, my name is Blake Miller. I'm Director of Sales here at Innovative Timing Systems. As we're waiting for the last few folks to jump on here, a couple of quick notes. You do have the ability to ask questions. I forget exactly what it looks like, but on the little side column panel that shows up with GoToWebinar, you can type in questions. Feel free to type in questions anytime. I am probably going to wait until the end to answer them, but don't hesitate to fire away with thoughts or questions as we go along. Unfortunately, Kurt, who was supposed to be hosting tonight's webinar, is not feeling well. Fortunately, he has tested negative for coronavirus. He is not feeling well from traditional flu, which is good and bad news. I guess I should open by saying that these certainly are unprecedented times. I'm sure some of you have school cancellations and work interruptions that are unlike anything we would have believed possible not all that long ago. So thank you for taking the time to come here anyway. I hope that you and your family are well and safe, and we're going to go ahead and get into tonight's discussion of PhotoVision. This call was largely prompted by the fact that tech support was getting some similar questions repeatedly, and we thought that it might be helpful to open up a session for folks to come to, that we could take you through some of the things that are just some of the common blocking points, I guess, as you get started. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started by explaining what an EVT file is. In PhotoVision, you have the ability to take data from any meat management platform out there. All of them use the same file format, and it's called an EVT. Sometimes it'll be called links.evt or linksdatabase.evt or runnerdatabase.evt, but the file type .evt will be consistent across the board. PhotoVision doesn't care what meat management tool you use. We have done most of our testing, and our experience is largely with MeatPro, so we are biased towards it, and that's what I'm going to show you tonight. However, there are many great platforms. We don't endorse or specify any particular meat management platform. For the others, I'm not knowledgeable about them, so I won't be able to help you with those, but I'm going to show you real quick that in MeatPro, when you have your events and your teams and your athletes all established and displayed, and you have seeded your meat, there is an option under interfaces for FAT, fully automatic timing. You can set that up. In here, you will select a file location for what they're calling the directory. Now, these buttons here, it makes no difference what you select. The interface file format that I was talking about earlier, that EVT file, is an industry standard. Everybody uses the same one. We just haven't paid MeatPro for the rights to put our name here yet. So that directory, you'll see I've selected one that for the purpose of tonight's discussion. But when you generate an EVT file in MeatPro, which you can have done automatically, it's called updating the start list. When you update the start list, that places a file in the location that I was just pointing to, which I'm going to bring up and show you here, called links.evt. And if I hover over this, you'll see that it was just modified, at 8:05 p.m. my time, which indicates that it was just replaced. That file feeds this data in PhotoVision. All it does is tells PhotoVision who's in what event, round, and heat and lane. It is not necessary that you have an EVT file in PhotoVision to time a meet. It makes it easier for you because it allows you to see the data that you're going to be sending back to the meet management tool later, but it's not a requirement. You can time meets without it. So that covers the EVT file. If you still have any questions about that or what it is, like I said, go ahead and ask those using the GoToWebinar tool, and I'll answer them later. Another question that came up was installing the software. Now, some of you have been customers for a while, and early versions of the version 2 software, you'll notice that I'm using 2.0.11 now. Early versions of the version 2 software did not have an installer. Newer versions only require that you click the setup file just like you would any other Windows software. If you've had any troubles, if there are any problems with your installation or you can't get the software to run, if there's likely some sort of glitch or problem with the installation, and the thing to do is simply call tech support. They are happy to help you with that. So I was asked to mention that. The first thing that I'll start with on what we call the main screen of PhotoVision, and this is the main screen, is that when you start the software, you should see here that PhotoVision 2000 has been detected. That indicates that your camera is plugged in and the software is talking to it. You know for a fact that your camera is working correctly, that your connection is stable. And you can even click Start Live Camera View. Now, in this case, you can see I'll put my hand in front of the camera. You can see in this screen that this is a live view. I'm pointing it at my monitor for lack of a better thing to put in view. The next thing that you'll want to see is that your fat cap receiver shows up down here as enabled and it's green. If one of those two things are not there, then your software is not ready to time a meet and you'll need to troubleshoot. Most likely, the reason for one of those two things not showing up is that you have a problem with one of your connections, or it's possible that there's an issue with the drivers. However, we aren't seeing many of those issues anymore now that we've gone to the new installer that ensures that everything gets to the right place. So once you know that your hardware is working correctly, that is that your fat cap receiver is enabled, your camera is showing, you've checked that when you start the live camera view, something actually shows up and you're able to edit that, the gain and gamma, change some of these settings, then you know that you're prepared to time the meet. The next thing that you're going to need to do is set up your file settings. And you certainly could do this the day before. These settings are always going to show whatever was showing in these file locations when you last shut down your software. So this is not a configuration file that sits on your hard drive somewhere that you can load later. It is, in fact, just whatever was here the last time that you booted up your software. So I'm going to run through each of these files real quick, and I'm going to explain to you kind of what they do and give you some suggestions for how you might organize your photos, although it's or your files, but it's pretty straightforward. The log file is simply it's a data log for use by us if you run into some sort of problem. It's a log of everything that the software does, what your computer is doing in the background. If there was some kind of internal error, it goes into the log file and helps us troubleshoot and continue development. One thing that you can do to help us is that at the beginning of every meet, if you rename the log file, so you can see right now it's set to PhotoVision log file.txt. If you set it to a name like today's meet, meet name, meet name, and 1, that helps us get the right log from you for the event that you were timing that day. So it's a best practice. If you don't change the name, what happens is that log file becomes very, 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 very long because it just builds, all it does is add lines to the end of the file. And when we need to review something, we have to review a log file that is, pages long, as opposed to something that just applies to the meat that we're trying to work with. The CSV file is a backup recording of spacebar captures. And the purpose of this really has to do with non-track and field type events. Let's say it could be used in track and field as a backup for finish times, but arguably it's more applicable to the cross-country space, or we have other strange applications for the software like boat race timing and some other things like that. And all it is literally a log of the times that you hit the space bar. So something that it's probably best practice to change to similarly the meet name. Meet name CSV, so that you have it for yourself if you ever need it. Now the photo tree file. This is where we get into the meat of what's relevant for track timing. The photo tree file is a file that stores a tree of start times and associated bookmarks. So for every event, round, and heat, you will have a start time. And think of a tree structure. Under the event, round, and heat, or in a given start time, really, you're going to have a series of bookmarks. In theory, one bookmark for each participant. Now, it's possible that you had two participants who finished very close together. You might not hit the space bar twice for those two participants. Then you would only have one bookmark for those two people, and that's just fine. A bookmark is entirely designed to make it easier for you to time, and I'm going to show you that here in a minute. But the file that stores that data is called the photo tree. It is proprietary to innovative timing systems. This is not something that other systems use in a similar format. Now, I'm not going to save this because it will overwrite the data that's here. But you will see here is a sample photo tree file.txt. It's simply a text file. You could open this file. You can view it. In fact, why don't we go ahead and do that? I'm going to open this file and show you what it actually looks like. In Notepad. Is the event, round, and heat, the start time as an elapsed time, and as a time of day. So 16:35, 54, 5:51 was the start time of day. That'd be 4:35 p.m. and 54 seconds. And then the elapsed time for each of the bookmarks, along with an associated code that references a image. So these images are, these numbers are names of images, and this just allows the software to quickly reference that information. So you'll see that this would be the first bookmark at 54,887. This would be the second one at 55,627, the third, and so on. Then you go on to the next event, round, and heat. And one thing I'll say as I'm going through this, I'm talking about some fairly technical things here. And you don't feel like you need to fully understand every single one of these things. It's my goal in this conversation to just try to make you aware of what's going on and help you understand what's happening in the background of the software. I think awareness of the sort of technical side of things can sometimes be helpful when you're having some sort of confusion or trouble at an event. It really helps you operate the software more efficiently as well. So don't feel like you have to understand every last one of these details. I'm going into the weeds a little bit because I want you to be as knowledgeable as possible. So that's a photo tree. The photo folder is, as it implies, literally just the folder where you have decided that you're going to store photos. You can have other things in that folder. So the folder I just showed you, you'll notice also had the photo tree. It had LIF files in it. It had CSV files, a log file. It's okay if there are other things in this folder. So this is the folder that I had selected. I'm not going to reselect it again, but that's this folder would typically be named for the meet. And I'll take a step back there and say that it's ideal to rename or create a new folder for every single meet. So, one day I'm at, Center High School, the next day I'm at Union High School, and I'll have the Center meet and maybe with a date on the end of it. And then I might be at Union High School the next day, or maybe it's my first meet of the year, and then the next meet is the second meet of the year, and then it's our invitational, or however you can quickly understand, the logical framework for which event you're working with. It's helpful for finding the right information when you need to find it, especially when you're navigating windows like this one. So next up is the LIF folder. So again, I'll explain what a LIF is. LIF, I believe, stands for Links Interchange Format. Everybody probably knows that Finished is the first company way back to come up with a line scan camera. And they're still around, but because they were the first, a lot of their ways of doing things have become industry standards. And so every company following them, including all the meet management tools and other camera manufacturers, have all simply just continued their naming conventions and methodologies for organizing data, simply for convenience sake. So that folder, that folder is going to be the folder where you're going to store your LIF files. You see, I've identified a LIF folder within the sample data folder. Now remember, this would be the name of the meet. And then in here, you would have another folder named LIF or LIFs or whatever is comfortable. So again, imagine that this folder was named for the meet. Inside, you would have a LIF folder. In fact, I'll go ahead and just make a new one to make it easy. So this would be LIFs. I keep trying to use the wrong keyword. LIFs. Just like that. And there it goes. So in a LIF file, so I'll show you a LIF file. In a LIF file is nothing more than information identifying the heat. So this was heat 1, round 1, or sorry, event 1, round 1, heat 1. It was the females 60-meter dash in the Tykes division. Now, this data came from a Canadian, so that's hence the English version of meter. The start time for that meet, and then below it, the start time of that heat, I'm sorry, and then below that is going to be some data about each of the participants. So there's a name, the school they were with, some timing data that's not used for track, and then a finish time. Now in this case, or a start time. You'll notice that in this case, the start times are all the same, but then here would be a finish time. So there's only one finisher in this heat. This was my testing I was doing earlier. So they finished the 60 meters in 54.848 seconds. Obviously not necessarily legitimate data. We were just doing some testing. But this file format, this text file made up of commas and and different pieces of important information is an industry standard. Everybody expects the same things. Any meat management tool that you use will be able to handle this data, literally anything, whether it's a high-tech meat manager, Meat Pro, Race Tab, Easy Meat Manager. I can't think of others off the top of my head, but any meat management tool out there can understand this same format. So again, we're an open platform in that regard. We don't specify what meat management tool that you use, and any meat management tool that you choose is going to be able to quite comfortably bring in the data that we generate. Next is the EVT file location, and I already showed you what that looks like. That's the information about, no, I'm sorry, I showed you the photo tree. So the EVT is the data that comes out of the meat management tool that tells us what to expect in terms of event, round, and heat. Right? You'll see I'm referencing it over here because this is what we do with that information. We display it here for you so that you can see what's coming. Helps you identify if you've timed every finisher in that heat. It gives you some information about who the runner is, what school they should be, what color they should be wearing because you know what school they're from, things like that. Helpful information as you become more of an expert in the software. And again, not required to time a meet. So that's the files. Those are the files and folders. If you have any questions about that, again, don't hesitate to type in a question, and I can answer those later. Okay. So real quick, I'm going to import some old data for demonstration purposes, just so that you can see. All right. Now, I'm not going to explain all this yet. I'm going to get to this in a second. But I just wanted you to note, let's say we've already timed event 2, round 1, heat 3. So we're now going to move on to event 3. So these 3 numbers here, event, round, and heat, need to be set before the start of every single heat. So we're now on, let's say this would have been on 2, 3, right? This is what it would have been from the last heat. We just timed event 2, round 1, heat 3. And you'll notice, that this yellow box went away. We call that an annunciator light. The annunciator light is there. It's just there to tell you that you haven't changed your event, round, and heat. If you see that yellow box, it's there for a reason. We're trying to remind you, have you set your event, round, and heat correctly? So we're ready to time our next heat, which, as I just showed you, is going to be event 3, heat 1. And I have in front of me a fat cap. I've got it plugged in. It's showing that it's in your arm, or you can click this button. Tells the computer to listen for the gun. That button must be pushed before the gun goes off. When you click this button, you'll see that this turns red. That means that the software is now listening for the gun to go off. And you'll notice there's no start times, nothing has happened yet. We do not have a start time yet. But when I take the microphone and I bang it on the table to simulate a gun, you'll see that you get a start time. You see that turns green. This starts to count down. At the same time that you do that you hear the gun go off, you back up that time by either clicking this button or hitting the F4 key on your keyboard. That tells the computer that runners are running. Now, this did not go into enable spacebar capture automatically because I have a setting wrong, and I'm going to show you that setting here in a minute. But you can see that now I'm in spacebar capture mode. You can select spacebar capture F12. I'll talk about those two modes here in a second. And then every time somebody finishes, I can select the spacebar. And every time you hit the spacebar, you'll see these numbers go up. So you know that your spacebar captures are happening. So I've just tapped the spacebar 3 times, generated a total of 600 frames because I've set it to take 200 frames for each spacebar capture. So now that I've done that, I finished timing that heat. I close spacebar. Takes it a second to flush buffers, and I apologize since I'm not in the office. I'm on a little bit of a slower computer. And then you can view the captured photos. Now you'll notice that now we have a time, a block here that covers event 3, round 1, heat 1. You'll also notice that up here is event 3, round 1, heat 1 with 3 spacebar captures. These are your bookmarks. So when you click on event 3, round 1, heat 1, here's my screen. Now, obviously, this is not what you would see in the real world. What you would see is something more like this. And you can then select one of those bookmarks. Now, in theory, the bookmark would be close to where the participant finished. So I'm going to go ahead and time. Let's assume that the spacebar capture and all of that was for this heat, heat 1. So just to demonstrate that again, I disabled the spacebar capture mode. Then I'm going to go to view captured photos. I'm going to select the correct heat, the one that I'm trying to time right now. I'm going to select the first bookmark. And then down here, and I hope that you guys can see this well on your screens, but these thumbnails are extremely helpful. On my screen, I can see just fine that this thumbnail is about where the girl crossed the line. And I'm sorry, let me turn my lane on. Oops. There we go. There we go. That's what I was trying to do. Sorry. In fact, let me just back up for a second. This button that I just turned on turns on this red line. This red line you would want to set to the front of the white line, the finish line, right? That line, when the participant crosses that line right there, that is their finish time. Additionally, we have a really, really cool feature that makes it very easy to set the lane that this person is in. So before you time the race, you'd want to set lanes, and you go ahead and clear all of them just to make sure that there aren't any there. So lane 1, upper line. Lane 1, upper line is there. Lane 2, upper line is there. 3 is there. 4 is there. 5, 6, and you don't have to put in 7, just anywhere below that is going to work. Now, the really cool thing, and you can leave that on, you can show the lanes or not. It doesn't matter whether they're showing or not. I'll leave mine just for convenience sake. Actually, I shut them off. Whether or not they're showing doesn't matter. If you click between where those lanes were, the software is going to automatically select that lane. Now, this girl is in lane 5. So you'll see when this button, this window pops up, that the software has automatically chosen the event, round, and heat from the selections that you made here, event, round 1, or event, round, and heat 1. And it is showing the elapsed time based on the start time for that heat and then the time that this image was taken. It's doing the math. And it's selecting lane 5 for you because you clicked in lane 5. You can click update. Then you can go to 2. You can go to this thumbnail because, again, you can see where this girl is approximately. You can use the scroll wheel on your mouse. There's 6, update, 3. Now this one, I'll just go ahead and scroll forward. There's 4. Now, just behind her, this is a situation, remember I was talking about earlier, you might not necessarily have a bookmark for every single participant. These two girls finished close together. The timer did not hit the space bar twice because they were so close together, they knew that they'd had the images. So slightly forward, and there's her chest, 3, then 4 is there. And again, I click in lane 2, it automatically populates in lane 2. Now, over here, you'll see there are the finish times for this heat. Now, it ordinarily should be alarming that you have zeros here. You run out of times here. You think you've timed the whole meet, and you have lane 1 is untimed, lane 7, 8, and 9 are untimed. I happen to know that my demo data just doesn't correlate with these images. It's stuff we made for demonstration purposes, so I apologize for that. These don't actually exist. In this case, it might be that somebody scratched or dropped out, or you would just know that you might have, in your rush to go through all this, maybe you skipped a bookmark. It's really convenient information to have on race day. You should be looking down here and seeing that I have finish times for every single one of the people that were supposed to be in that heat. Of course, if the starter told you that there was going to be something different, you'd be aware of that. It's okay for you to generate the LIF file, the one I showed you before that has the finish data. It's okay for you to generate that if you know there's a problem, because in that LIF data is only going the event, round, heat, lane, and the time. So if you have made a change in your meet management tool, it's okay that it doesn't necessarily reflect here. You can update your EVT file, go and re-import it. It will correct that data here, and all the times will stick. That is an option, but it's not necessary. And that has to do with the way that data structure was invented a long time ago, and it's really convenient. The next step would be to generate the LIF. So create a LIF file with your bib, HIP entries for the event. You see a little help that pops up there. When you generate this, you get this really cool pop-up window. It allows you to generate the LIF file for that heat. I'm only going to do one right now. I'm going to create, are you ready to have LIF files created? Yes. I'm going to go ahead and put them here. I'm going to hit save. It says a total of 9 athlete records were written to the file. It says 9, even though you only had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 finish times. It says 9 because there were 9 people in the EVT data. So it was expecting 9. That's not a problem. It's only doing that because you have EVT data. Again, the meet management tool can accept some missing information. Now, this is how it works. I'm going to show it to you in Meet Pro. Really just to kind of prove that it works more than anything. But in other meet management tools, it'll look different. You say get event results. Oops. Results from a file. There is, that's my old one. Lifts. You can see that was the one I just generated, 8:34 p.m. In come those 5 people. And it's already gone ahead and it's scored the meet. You can see that the results are correct. That's the process. I know it took me a while to explain that to all of you, but it's that quick. You've now finished that heat. You can close this window, go down here, go to the next heat. You see that little yellow annunciator light went away. Clear arm, and bang goes the gun, and you're now timing the second heat of event 3. You can hit your space bar yeah, it'll take more photos. Disable that. Go into your view captured photos. You'll now have event 3, round 1, heat 2. And you're going to get more pictures from my computer screen because that's what my camera is pointing at right now. But hopefully that demonstrates the point. So again, I'm going to show you this one more time just to show you how quick this can be and how easy it is. I'm going to time the second heat of the meat. So view captured photos, second, click 1. I'm going to go down here. I'm going to find the participant when she's near the second line. Scroll forward. There she is. Update 2, 3. Update 4. And there we go. You can see right here, that heat is now timed. It's that quick. Then I can generate the list, prevent 2, create list, hit save, and you're done. Now you've got a list for that heat. So it's really fast. Let's see, let me go back to the view captured screen real quick and just see if there's anything else that I need to explain to you. The blue information that's down here, I'll just go ahead and do another heat just for fun, is showing you, yeah, I know, it doesn't actually have a time for that person. It's showing you what would go into the LIF file, and it's structured the same way it is in a LIF. It's really for informative purposes. When you're really familiar with what goes into a LIF file, this data becomes more meaningful to you. But it's really just there for informational purposes as you're going through timing a heat. If you mess up, so right here we have 2 start times for event 3, round 1, heat 1. Let's say that this one was an error and you don't want it there anymore. It's just a mistake. You can delete it. It's going to ask you, are you absolutely sure? Of course, once it's done, it's gone. To do that, all I did was double click on it. Let's say that a time was wrong. Let's say I had a start time that was incorrect. Let's say that I can't imagine why that would be. Better example was, let's say that you forgot to, here's a good example. I'm going to go ahead and go back. So see how I've already got start times and finishers for event 3, heat 2? I'm going to leave this in event 3, heat 2. I'm going to ignore my enunciator that's telling me you need to change this information. I'm going to clear. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to capture a start time. Right, and if I go back in here to view my captured photos, you'll see, whoops, I've got 2 times for event 3, heat 2. Not a problem. This was actually supposed to be heat 3. Updated. And there it is, it updates. And then you'll see it's updated down here. Well, it's not showing here yet because I don't have any bookmarks under it, but it would, when it did, it would pop up here as another green V, and it would show you the bookmarks below it like it does here. And type whatever you want to type, and it will take into account whatever you do. It's important to note these formats are important. It is required that it is 00:00:00 some number point, in 3 digits. That is a requirement for most meat management tools. As far as I know, they all require that. There is a zoom capability. So let's go back to one of these where there was kind of a close finish. We don't have any close finishes in this, we don't have any really close finishes in this data. But let's say that I was really struggling to see kind of where her torso is. I can right click on this, and now you get this really good idea of what's going on there. See really close. Okay, you know, she's not quite there yet. This is the finish line. She's not there. So I need to go forward. Okay, now we're talking, that's the time. And then I could assign that time to her. I did that by right clicking on this window. This line here is purely for informational purposes. It does not change the time. It is there to help you see where that line is. It extends the finish line vertically up into space. And then you can change you can change some settings here. If you click on these bars, you can change colors. You can increase or decrease greens or reds, or change the gamma, make the image brighter or darker after the fact. This is really helpful if you're having trouble determining a finisher. Every once in a while, you get these really close finish situations, and somebody was right on top of somebody else, maybe leaning into them a little bit, you know, a little gamesmanship. And, you know, you really can't tell. Or maybe you've got 2 teams in the meet that have similar jersey colors or something like that. This allows you to play with things and kind of hopefully see them a little better. You can also get the zoom window by clicking on that zoom. There you go. Button. It looks like this. So if you click on the zoom button and then you hover over the image, you get the zoomed in version of the image. So this whole window really you can attribute primarily to close finishes. Normally you're not going to have to touch any of this. It's here so that when you do have something that's tricky, for some reason hard to see, you know, maybe you're in a distance event and you're trying to see people's hip numbers and you're having trouble with one, you know, this can help with that. You'll also notice there are 6 buttons down here. You can use these buttons to go forward and backwards. You can also use the letters. See how the S in skip back is in parentheses, the P in previous is in parentheses. If you type P on the keyboard, I'll move my mouse so you can see I'm not clicking, but I'm selecting the P key on my keyboard. It's going to move the images forward and backward. Some people have a preference. I have a scroll wheel on my mouse. We've designed this really around the scroll wheel. That's really the easiest way to do it. But if you prefer the buttons or, you know, a key instead, you've got that option. If you don't set the lanes, you're not going to be able to use the auto select feature. You do have to select the lanes, and you do have to do it for every single meet, because the lanes are not going to be in the exact same position on every meet. And so maybe as part of your checklist before the race, as you're kind of going through and setting up, it's a good idea to go ahead, come in here and set the lanes with some test data. Or if you're like me, you forget and you do it when you're timing your first heat. You can see we can go up to a 10-lane track. If for some reason you need to go above 10, actually a good example of that. So in your distance meet, it actually could be helpful to, when you get to the end and you're doing the 1600 and there are no lanes there, you're working off the hip numbers, you can clear this. And then when you click, now you're going to select the lane number that corresponds to whatever is on their hip number. So if they've got 12 in the lane on their hip, or 9 or 10 or 11 or 13, whatever, any number, up to, I think they're allowing up to 25 now, which is crazy, but hey, they do it. You can put that in there. You do need to have a number in there. Can't be blank. And this athlete number is auto-populated from the EVT data. If you are using athlete number or bib number, you can enter that information here. You'll notice that the finish time is obviously automatically selected. Everything else. So that's a deep dive on the viewer screen. I think I've covered everything there. One thing I didn't cover on this main screen, well, there's two things I didn't cover. I'll hit those real quick. The normal day setting is what you're going to use most of the time. If you have a really bright day, the sun is just really hammering down on you, no clouds, maybe the track is a little bit bleached out, kind of a white color or something like that. This bright day, it does a really good job of kind of taking away the extremes. Super bright day, again, does the same thing. And if you're indoor at night, this helps pick up some of these other colors. And you'll notice right up here, you couldn't, before I clicked that button, you could almost not see this wall, but then you can see it here. And it just helps a little bit. Another option is to increase the gain. So this will start to wash out the images of what it'll do. If you have gain settings above about halfway up this scale, it can begin to impact the speed, the frame rate of the camera. That's because you're trying to capture more light. Inside the camera, each frame, it has to open the shutter and close the shutter again. It's doing that digitally, so that's why you don't hear anything, but there is actually a opening and closing of the shutter inside the camera. If you do this for too long, it's having to leave the camera open longer than works for the speed with which it needs to capture the frame. So it's trying to capture 200 frames per second, but if it has to leave the shutter open longer than 1/200th of a second, then of course it's not able to get 200 frames per second. That's okay. Just keep in mind that it does reduce the accuracy of the camera slightly. In reality, it probably doesn't matter, but just something I wanted you to know. Gamma is the opposite. It makes it darker. Increasing gamma does not have a substantial impact on the frame rate of the camera. Exposure, similarly, if you start to get up above values of 6,000 or 8,000, same problem. Just like gain, gain's a digital version of exposure is the way to think about it. Exposure is going to leave that camera lens open longer, and if you get too high up into the thousands, eventually, you're just having to keep the shutter open longer than 1/200th of a second. Now on the camera, and I can't show you this. Sorry, that was focus. I can't show you this because I don't have the ability to put a camera in. There's also a manual shutter, or what's this called? I can't think of what this is called. I apologize, guys. I'm not a camera expert. If you're having trouble getting your images to be bright enough, or they're washed out and there's nothing you can do about it, rotate this second ring. It's the ring closer to the body of the camera, and it will manually, physically reduce the size of the iris of the camera. So just be aware of that. On the camera, you've got a focus. You can see how if I change that, it goes in and out of focus. And then behind that, you've got another ring that allows you to control manually the exposure. When you're lining up your camera at the beginning of the meet, this show full screen button, so let me do that again a little slower. This show full screen is really nice. This button brings up this. You put it on your monitor. It's nice and big, and you can stand back a few feet from this, really quite far, and you can see if you're lined up with the finish line. I typically set my camera to the same height every time, so focus isn't an issue. But this helps you make sure that you're lined up. Once you set your focus one time for a specific height and angle, you should never have to change it again in theory. Also on the camera, one more thing about it. You'll see there are these little nubs on the camera. And again, I wish I could show them to you. There's little nubs, like little screws. If you didn't know those were set screws, I'm telling you that now. Really convenient. Once you've got the focus and the brightness manually set, tighten those screws up with your finger a little bit, and it stops it from moving on you accidentally. All right. So we've gone through everything that's on the visual parts of the screen. The last thing I'm going to do, and I'll try to go through this fairly reasonably quickly. I think Kurt, if you guys haven't been on a webinar with Kurt, he likes to have really, really long webinars. He's our CEO. He's also the guy that wrote the vast majority of the code that's behind this software. An absolute genius, in my opinion. But he likes to give very long, very technical webinars, and so I'm different. I like to try to get to the point a little better. So I apologize for droning on a little bit, but I want to make sure that you guys have all the information if you're interested. So the next thing we're going to look at settings. So one more time, that was in Edit, Settings. Settings, just like the folders and files down here, are stored permanently on your hard drive in the registry. They're the same every single time you boot the software. Every single time you load the software, you're going to get whatever settings you had when you quit the software the last time. So be mindful of that. If your scenario, your situation, what you're doing is changing from meet to meet, it's not a bad idea as part of your sort of checklist before each meet to come in here and check through some of these things. Kurt and I are both pilots, and one of the things that we like to think about when we use software or at meets or at races of any kind is to think about how you get ready for takeoff in an airplane. And even the best pilots, people who've been doing it for years and years and years and thousands of hours, always use a checklist. Even the airline pilots in the biggest airplanes have been flying forever and ever run a checklist to make sure they don't forget anything. As part of my checklist before every single meet would be to come in here and look at every single one of these boxes and just ask myself, is this correct? Is my output file format correct? Yes, I'm going to meet management software. Default bib number. Keep in mind that this is for non-track races. Same here. For any track meet, you're going to be using meet management software. Any track meet, you're going to be using default bib number. This is something coming in the future. Photo viewer settings. The number of photos to jump forward or backward is in reference to those buttons that I showed you before. It also applies this value is also the distance between the thumbnails. So this box, photo viewer setting, refers to what you see here. How far apart is this image from this one? This image to this one. Some people prefer it to be a little bit further. Some people like it to be less. It's really a matter of personal preference. I like the default setting of 40, but you may want to have less thumbnails. So you might increase that setting. It also refers to how many images forward or backwards you move when you click the jump or the skip button. Notice that the skip and the jump, if you look down here, you go from 191 to 231. It went 40 images forward because this setting is set to 40. Now you can apply that jump value to the scroll bar. Warning on that setting, that is going to make your scroll bar for each scrolling detent move 40 frames. It's going to make it move really fast. The timeline refers to oops, sorry, so this, I've moved on to this red line. You can shut it off, you can turn it on, and then there is also what we call an interpolation. What this does is it will, oops, if this setting was on, make sure this, see how this moves? If you click further back, this is going to move the time artificially forward or backward. So it's more like a line scan functionality. A fair warning on that, it's not accurate as I'm going to show you what I'm saying here visually. So in theory, you could come back here and select this time here, and then select this time here, and it would artificially correct the time. Now, that's not as accurate as moving her forward to that location. So it's not really the ideal use case for the software. It was a feature that was requested early on in the development of the software. We've left it in there. I wanted to let you know what it is, but frankly, I suggest not using it. But at least you know what it is. Frozen is the best setting. This F4 start time key assignment box, this tells the software which capture mode you want to automatically enter once you've hit the F4 key. So see how it's set to enable spacebar capture? I'm going to go ahead and clear. I get a gun capture. I'm going to hit F4. See how it's in disable spacebar capture, or so it's in spacebar capture mode. This turned red. If it was in F12 mode, then it would automatically enter F12 capture. And I realize I need to come back and explain these again real quick. So I will do that here in a moment once I get through the settings. If somebody could remind me of that if I forget. This just sets the software to automatically, the second that you've got a start time, it goes into that mode so that you're ready to start either hitting the space bar or the F12 key. If you're finding, like if you're in the 100 meters and you're clearing and arming and you're trying to collect a manual start time, and then you go up here and you're trying to click on the space bar, by then your finishers are already crossing the line. You don't have that kind of time. You know, you can't be sitting here looking at your space bar and then trying to click around and click buttons. It needs to just automatically go into that mode. That is what this setting is for. I hope that is clear. I'm struggling to find the words I'm wanting there, but times. This just shows you the time. This sets the specificity or the how granular the times are, the resolution of the times in the view captured photos screen, in that screen. I like seconds. It places less excessive data. It also changes what shows here. See how this is only seconds? If you set this to thousands, this is just sitting here buzzing away, trying to keep up and change. It's really unnecessary. So this is my preference, and I think for most people, this is probably where it will stay forever and ever. This checkbox, This is super important. This little checkbox right here gets a lot of people. Show elapsed time on a photo viewer pop-up box. You have to give meet management tools an elapsed time. They don't want time of day. They want an elapsed time. So what I mean by that is, let's see if I uncheck this. I don't think I have to reboot the software to show this. See how these are elapsed times, 57.395 seconds. Let's go back here, and I'm going to go ahead and do lane 1. Lane 1. See how this is a time of day? If I click update, see how it puts the time of day in there? Most meet management tools are not going to know what to do with that. This is here for when you're timing other events, non-track events. So if you're doing, let's say you're trying to collect data that you're then going to push into some other piece of software, right? Like I don't know, like a horse race. This is a good example. You know, they've got their own software. They still use a camera, same technology, but they want time of day, and then they do math with it. If you're seeing some weird stuff, this checkbox, super important. Check it, leave it checked. Performance level, beginner versus expert. This is really actually convenient. At first, when you're using the software, it helps to have it in beginner mode. It's going to leave all of the help screens up. Kurt's going to show you a lot of warning screens before you do something. It's going to help establish your brain's muscle memory to not make common mistakes. If you switch to expert mode, we're going to let you make those mistakes. We're not going to show you a, let me go ahead and disable that while running, just so I don't fill my computer's memory up. If this is an expert mode, we're not going to show you all of that. We're not going to, every time you're about to save over or save a LIF file and you've got a participant missing, we're not necessarily going to run all those checks every single time. So it's really helpful to switch over to expert mode once you become comfortable with the software. It makes you a little faster. I did not show fat cap calibration at the beginning of this video. If everybody at the end here wants to see that, I will try to show it to you. It's pretty darn straightforward what you're supposed to do. The process walks you through it. But when you do a fat cap calibration, these are the calibration settings. So when I calibrated my fat cap, my computer needs to add 1 millisecond because it takes 1 millisecond for the sound to come down the microphone cable into the transmitter, go over the air, into the receiver, through the USB cable, into my computer, and my computer to process. It takes 1 millisecond. This corrects for that error. My lasers similarly are 1 millisecond delay. These numbers are usually similar because it's actually, more often than not, it's actually your computer that's got the delay, not the fat cap. Manual adjustments to add. Industry standard is that for a manual time, you add 240 milliseconds to that time. It's a penalty for the fact that you did not have an FAT time. If for some reason you're not able to use your fat cap, this is the time that's going to be added. This bookmark allows you to adjust for human error. If you always hit your bookmark key too fast or too slow, this helps you adjust for that. Basically, it helps compensate for a delay in you hitting the space bar when the participant crosses the line. This checkbox says that you're going to enable the capture gun start time or start signal button when F1 is pressed. So what that means is just that when you click the clear button, F1, clear arm, you're automatically going to be preparing to capture the start signal. Seems kind of obvious, but some people wanted a two-step process. They wanted to be able to clear the time and then enable listening for the fat cap. We typically run it where it's automatic, but you can separate those two processes if you want. You can clear the time, arm the computer, and then tell it you want to listen for the gun sound. It's going to slow you down a little bit, but if it makes you more comfortable, that option is there. This checkbox here, turn off digital ports on the fat cap or connect receiver. On the front of your fat cap, you've got two little circular ports, port 1 and port 2. Port 1 and 2 are there for lasers, your auto detect lasers. If you don't have lasers, you're not using lasers, or for whatever reason, you want to ignore the data coming from the lasers, you can disable them by checking this box. Turn off the digital ports. This also helps your computer not have to work as hard. So if you're not using them, you want this to be checked. It just is going to make the computer run a little bit more snappy. It's going to reduce the load on the computer. In the sensitivity and the acquisition speed, sensitivity refers to the sensitivity of the microphone. If you're getting erroneous start times from your fat cap, there are two things that you can do. One, in your fat cap, if you take off the back of the transmitter, which is the part that buckles, goes on the starter's waist, you take the back off, take the batteries out. Under there's a little dip switch, a little tiny switch. It's high, medium, or low. When we ship it on medium, I think almost all the time. If you're getting erroneous reads, you can change that to low. Or if you're not getting, when I say reads, sorry, you can tell it came from the RFID world. If you're missing gunfires by the starter, then you can move it to high. And again, that's just a switch on the back. It's a physical switch buried inside your fat cap. This is a digital version of the same thing. You can change both of those things. If you change them both to one extreme or the other, you can make your fat cap either never work or capture every little tiny sound that comes your way. So there's quite a broad range between that switch and this sensitivity setting. So one nice thing about it is that once this is set, it typically doesn't ever need to be set again. Your fat cap doesn't become more or less sensitive over time. Acquisition speed is, you know what? I'm actually not 100% sure on that one. It's been 2 on my computer since the day I started, and I don't know what that means. This is what happens when, unfortunately, Kurt's not available to give the presentation. I'm not familiar with that one. These are some miscellaneous settings that are just for your convenience. Play sounds on F12 start and stop. If you want your computer to ding at you when you press the F12 key, this is convenient. The reason for that is typically when you're in F12 mode, in fact, I'm just going to go ahead and show you guys F12 mode now. So instead of spacebar capture for 314, I'm going to go into F12 mode. So we're going to clear and just go ahead and manually start. If I go into F12 mode, this little pop-up shows up. Only if you're in beginner mode. If you're in expert mode, this pop-up will not appear. This feature allows you to press the F12 key to start and stop capturing of images at the full speed of the camera. The maximum frame that can be captured is 1,000 frames, which lasts about 120 seconds, 2 minutes. Which basically means you can run the camera nonstop for 2 minutes straight without processing any images. If you don't press the F12 key before the 24,000 images are captured, the software will automatically stop capturing. Keep in mind that based on the width of the image zone you have created, 24,000 images could require a lot of disk space. When you stop F12 capturing, it might take a couple of seconds to finish writing the data to the disk. It depends on how fast your hard drive is. Thus, don't stop capturing until you know you've got a couple of seconds. So in the 100 meters where everybody finishes close together, you're going to want to hit F12 to enable the camera. It's going to just turn the camera on. It's going to start capturing photos. And then once the last participant has crossed the line, you hit F12 again, and it's going to stop them. When you use the F12 key, F12 mode, you do not get bookmarks. So it's a little bit slower to time the race, because when you go into the view captured photos screen, you're not going to get a 1, 2, 3, 4 down here. All you're going to get is this. So you'd have to scroll to here, assign her a time, then here, assign her a time. Then you can keep going. You might do the jump. So there's another person, assign her a time. Assign. You see how it's just a little bit slower? Definitely slower than just going bang, here, bang, done, here, done, here, done, right, like that. So the nice thing about F12 mode, though, is that you're going to capture all those images. You're not going to miss anything. You don't have to hit the space bar every time somebody crosses the line. It's a little bit safer. Some people prefer it. It's an option, although spacebar mode is pretty rock solid. But the sound for play sound on F12 start and stop is there, so that if you're using F12 mode, if you're typically not looking at your keyboard, you're looking up at the finish line because you're trying to decide when to hit that key. So you'll place your finger on the F12 key and then you're going to look at the finish line. If you happen to have moved your finger, let's say you were just, you moved the wrong key. When you click that key, if you don't hear the sound, then you know, oh, I didn't do something right. I didn't hit the F12 key. So that's really there to help you when you're in F12 mode. Make sure that your finger was in the right place and you started the time. Just a little convenience thing. I prefer spacebar mode, so I have it shut off. It's really personal preference. Clearing the LIF entries when LIF file is saved to disk. That refers to this window here. Typically, you want to clear them out. Otherwise, you end up with this big, long list. Somebody must have asked to have it an option to not have it do that, so we added it. Auto save the photo tree. There's really no reason why you would not want to check this box. This just automatically saves the photo tree, which is that list of data that shows up over here. Automatically saves that start time. If you don't, then you've got to save the tree. No idea why you would uncheck that box, but I'm sure there was some reason why somebody in some use case didn't need the photo tree to automatically save or didn't want it to. So that should always stay checked for track timing. Refreshing the live view every 1 second during rapid capture. This is just whether or not this screen is going to continue to update when you are in a capture mode. If you're using a computer that's slow, maybe you don't have a fast hard drive, or not hard drive, but a fast graphics card in your computer, you might want to uncheck that box. And these two checkboxes turn off these buttons. So honestly, so interestingly, since we're auto saving the photo tree after I close out the F12 or spacebar, I could turn that off and it's just going to eliminate that button. Similarly, manually capturing photos, I could and probably should just leave off. Manually capturing photos, by the way, literally means that you are gonna, when you want to capture some number of frames, either 10 to 500 frames, You can click that button and it'll capture 10 to 500 frames and it'll put them in the viewer. It's most commonly used for form analysis. Like if you're wanting to look at a quarterback throwing a football, you could say, okay, throw it. And then right as they throw it, you click that button and it'll just take 500 frames. Although you could use the F12 key for the same thing. I don't know why you would choose to do it manually. Somebody asked for it, so we gave it to them. Rapid capture settings. So these are the spacebar/laser settings. Interestingly, quick side note, this is the special stuff that you get when you come to webinars. The code that is run in the software when you click the spacebar is the exact same code that is run when you get a laser break if you've got auto detect lasers. It's literally the exact same code. All it's doing when you hit that spacebar is it's taking some number of frames before and some number of frames after the time that you clicked that spacebar, and it's storing them to long-term memory. You can set this anywhere from 20 to 1,000. If you're really, really good at hitting the spacebar exactly at the right time, right when that participant crosses the line, you can take this number down. If you're really, really bad at it, you can take it way up. Realistically, 100 to 200 photos prior and 100 to 200 photos after is probably pretty good. But I encourage you to practice before going to a meet that matters. Have somebody run across the line in front of the camera or in front of the couch in your house or whatever to figure out, okay, what's a good setting here? If you're finding that you're not getting a meaningful number of photos before and after when you think you're hitting the spacebar, which is supposed to be when they cross the line, then these settings are probably what you need to be looking at adjustment-wise. Okay, in the last section here, this refers to the clock. I do not have a good way to demonstrate the clock. I'll very quickly talk through these settings. And then I think we will actually be done unless you guys have questions. So if you have questions, start thinking about those, fire away. I've got a couple of questions in here that I'm gonna answer here in a few minutes. So be thinking about any questions you have for me, and we'll be answering those here in a minute. So clock. Before the meet starts, if you have a clock and you've got the clock dongle plugged in, you're gonna click connect. Obviously, I don't have the clock plugged in right now, so I'm gonna get this error. You would connect. These two buttons allow you to set the clock starting up or counting up or counting down from a time. This is here, frankly, for your own entertainment. If you wanted to say the meet's going to start when the clock hits 0, kids, and you want to put in here, this is, by the way, hours, the first set of zeros. This is hours, minutes, seconds. So if you say, I want the meet's going to start in 15 minutes. 15. It's not going to let me. Oh yeah, well. And then you can click this button, and the clock will start counting down from 15 minutes. And you can just tell everybody that, look, the meet's starting in 15 minutes. You could count up, and you could count up from a number. You could start at an hour and go up to an hour and 5 seconds. Again, not really sure why you'd want to do that, but if you have a reason, we gave you the ability. This button here, I know you guys can't read what this says because it's black on blue. It obviously lights up once you're connected to the clock. Show battery voltage is what this says. This battery voltage is just tells you how well charged the clock is. If you use the clock regularly, you can click check this box. The software will remember the COM ports that you selected, and it'll just automatically connect to the clock every time. These two settings here are really cool. If you want the clock to show preliminary times, like the preliminary winning time, this checkbox allows you to do that. So when the first laser break happens in a heat, if this box is checked, the elapsed time for that runner is going to flash on the clock. And it's going to stay there until whatever you set in here. So if you want it to stay there for 5 seconds, it'll just flash on the screen for 5 seconds, and then it'll go back to 0 again. This is really cool for the audience. It gives them a very quick indication of the approximate time, approximate first finishing time. Keep in mind, it is preliminary. Just like in the Olympics, you get that instantaneous preliminary time. Then they click the button on the camera, like, do the actual timing inside the view capture screen. And they will correct that time, plus or minus, usually a couple of thousandths, but it's a meaningful amount. So it's preliminary time, shows when the laser break's not official, but it's really convenient. You can also tell it that you want the clock to start from 0 on race start and clear when you click the clear time icon. Super cool feature. Bang goes the gun, the clock starts automatically, it counts up until you hit the clear/arm button. Particularly in the longer distance events, this is, really valuable for the participant because it allows the kid to see their first lap time, their second lap time, etc. And again, you don't have to do anything to make it work. If you have a 7 or 9 inch clock, you can adjust the brightness. And these buttons turn the LEDs on and off. I'm not really sure what these buttons do, to be honest. When you have a clock plugged in, you're going to see a COM port here. It'll say like COM5. Click on that. It'll put it in this box automatically. The clock number. This is tricky. Every once in a while, this one gets somebody. You can assign a clock a number. The reason is if you have 2 or more clocks in the same area, you don't want both clocks to change every time somebody sends a command to those clocks. So they can be assigned a number, 1 to 256, I believe. When we ship you the clock, it's supposed to come to you with the clock number set to 1. Sometimes it doesn't. And you'll have to change that. And so tech support can help you with that. There's also software available that we can change the clock number. Don't want to get into the details too far there, but it's there. Okay. Real quick, the disk buffer writes. This is just here to tell you if the disk is getting behind. That is, if your hard drive is getting behind when you're trying to write photos out to the disk. These will rise. And then this here is just a log of everything that's happening in the software. As you become more and more comfortable with the software, you'll find yourself paying attention to this more and more. It just gives you some interesting information. Like, for example, you can see how far off I was on my manual backup time here. Interesting little things. You can clear that if you click that button. It's just there for informational purposes. Okay, I have covered everything that I was going to cover, so I am going to go to the questions. And I appreciate you guys interacting here. It helps me a lot. I hope you've enjoyed this, or it's been helpful at least. And again, apologize for Kurt being out and you getting the B team today, but I did my best. All right. So somebody asked, you're not seeing the V or the bookmarks under the race links. These V's only appear when you have data in the photo tree. So if you don't have a start time and you don't have bookmarks from the spacebar capture, then you're not going to see this information. I'm guessing that that's what that is. If you are, for some reason, not seeing this information, even though you have start times and bookmarks, give us a call. There might be something else going on there that I don't know about. Give the tech support guys a call or shoot me an email, Jeremy. Let's see. Yeah, calibrating. Thanks, Bobby, for the reminder there. We'll do that here in a minute. So you have to click the F4 button exactly when the gun goes off. No. You want to try to be close, though. So at smaller meets, at meets where you're less concerned about the absolute validity of an F/A time being FAT. Some people will always take a manual start time as a backup to the gun, particularly in longer distance events. And if for some reason there's a miss, there have been days where, I've had starters who insist that, their self-made 22 blanks are plenty powerful enough, and I've got my fat cap configured for something different, and it's like, okay, I can either argue with this guy, change the settings on my camera or on my fat cap, or accept that I might miss one, and it's a low key meet. Maybe it's not even a school meet. Maybe it's something for kids. You can just use the manual start time instead of an FAT time, right? I'm not going to advocate that, but it's an option. That's what the manual backup is there for. You'll note in the software, see down here, I got this little red M. That's because the last start time I got was a manual start time, and it's red. If it's a FAT time, you get a little green F here. And our software looks at the difference between the fully automatic time and the manual time and makes a decision about which one is to be correct. If you hit the F4 key and there was a perfectly valid gun start time, a proper FAT time, it's just going to ignore what you manually entered. It's going to ignore the F4 key. But the F4 key is designed to be a backup for an FAT time. So in theory, yes, you need to hit the F4 key when you see the smoke come out of the gun or you hear it. That's the goal. Now, know that if for some reason you're not paying attention and you miss it, you still have valid start times as long as your fat cap captured the gun. Software updates. So we are in the process of finishing an integration between our software and an automatic update system, third-party system. We are very close to being at a point where we push updates to you. You simply download them when the software needs an update. For now, new software is going to be issued manually. Now that does not mean we're going to ship you flash drives, but because we were working on this automated software update process, we went ahead and shipped new customers flash drives of the software, unless you were an existing RFID customer of ours, and then it would have been in the FTP folder. But the answer there, Eric, is that's where we're headed. We're just not quite there yet. Paige, I see your question here. I'm not sure about this one. This could be that could be a tech support question. Either shoot me an email or we'll follow up on that one after the fact. I'm going to take a note here. I'm not sure why that might be happening to you. Yeah, I didn't talk about laser capture. So let me go ahead and let's do that real quick. I guess I sort of explained, laser capture and spacebar capture run the same code. That means that the software is doing the exact same thing when a laser capture occurs as when a spacebar capture occurs, except that the lasers are doing it for you. So when the lasers are pointed at each other, the transmitter on the opposite side of the track from you, the receiver on this side with the cable plugged into the fat cap, when somebody breaks that line, it's a spacebar press. It's the same thing as hitting the spacebar on your keyboard. So it's going to give you a bookmark. The bookmark is going to be approximately at the correct time. So you see how this is slightly off. I mean, a better example would be, let's say you set your lasers down low, and maybe they're about this far off the ground. This girl's knee would have broken the laser there. So this is the time you're going to get from the laser break. You still have to come in here and correct for the torso. This is the correct finish time for this participant, not that. But that is what your laser will give you. Lasers are never going to be able to replace manually selecting a finish time. That's why in the Olympics, you get that preliminary time, and then a couple of seconds later, they've come in here to a screen like this one, and they've gone, oh, that's what my laser gave me? Nope, that is the correct time, and they correct it. So laser just generates these boxes, these bookmarks, these places that allow you to quickly get to the approximate location of the finisher. That's what the laser does. When the lasers are plugged in and you have this setting to automatically enable laser capture turned on, and you have this setting to turn off the digital ports off, then the laser will automatically collect and establish bookmarks for you. If that did not answer that question, let me know in your, with a new question, and I'll try again. Yeah, great question here about, do you have to enter athletes into Meet Pro in order to time athletes at practice? That was what I was saying earlier about the EVT data not being required. You can still run this software and produce time data just fine without having them entered into Meet Pro. So you would want to manually keep track of what you were timing if you wanted a record of it after the fact. But you could simply run event 3, then run event 4, then run event 5, then run event 6, right? For, let's say you just have one kid that's practicing, or 2 kids or whatever. Or you might just want to do one heat and then have all the kids come and look at the data. You could definitely do that. The software doesn't stop working because you don't have EVT data. Well, one of our wonderful tech support people, Bobby Bullen, Rockstar Bobby, is on, and he says that he's doing software updates through Splashtop for now. So when updates come out, Bobby will work to get your updates for you. And we do have an update coming soon, by the way. Just a second. Here's, okay, Paige, I understand. I understand now. So one thing about laser capture, it is, in my experience, I prefer not to use laser capture in longer events because of the possibility of lapping participants. If you're really paying attention, which frankly I'm pretty bad at, you can enable the laser capture, and then if you know that nobody's been lapped, but if you're watching and somebody is lapped, then you might not want to use the laser. Well, you wouldn't want to use the laser capture mode, because if you're using a clock, because it's going to show the wrong preliminary time. And there's nothing that our software can do about that, because there's nothing you can do about that because if two participants are running side by side, the laser would only get one break for those two participants going through. So we can't just count laser breaks to know exactly when a participant is technically first. So when you're doing long distance events, really the thing to do is just either if you don't have anybody lapped, don't have it automatically turn on. So I mean, what I would do is I would not have it automatically enable laser capture mode. So maybe you just set it to don't start any of the options. Bang goes the gun, your time starts, but don't enable laser capture until you're ready for the first finisher to come through. Now, if somebody has been lapped, you can do that. You just have to remember they've been lapped. And when you're in your view capture mode, the first time, let's say you know that the girl this girl, she lapped somebody. So when I get to this bookmark for her, she's been lapped. I know I'm going to ignore her. I'm just not going to give her the time the first time I see her. I'm just going to keep on going. So hopefully that answers that question. Paige, if you have any more questions about that, give me a call, and we can definitely talk about that more. Splash top. Sorry, I didn't explain that. Bobby, our support tech who's going to help you with those updates, has a piece of software that allows him to remote into your computer and change and unload the old software and put the new software on for you. We're basically just doing it manually. Like I said, that's not going to last that much longer. But if you don't have Splashtop, then Bobby's going to be in touch with you, and you'll end up with it. Okay, let's see if we can do a fat cap calibration. I'm going to show you the process. It's kind of tricky to do through a webinar like this, but at least show it to you and kind of talk you through some of the little quirks about it. I'd already explained before what that is doing. This calibration is setting these two numbers. It's correcting for the delay that happens either inside your computer or between the physical hardware, to make sure that all of the equipment is USATF compliant. And it is technically a requirement that you run this calibration. Now, the reality is you don't need to run the calibration every single meet, because the calibration doesn't typically change unless you've done something to modify your computer. So when you click this button, calibrate the fat cap transmitter. I've got them turned off. There we go. So what I did there is I unchecked the turn off digital ports button. You have to have the digital ports on for this. Calibrate fat cap transmitter. So it gives you instructions. Aim the camera at the starter pistol or the microphone. When you click OK below, it's going to count down from 3 to 0. Fire the pistol or tap the microphone. Wait a few seconds for the photo to show. So I'm going to try to do this. Let's see if I can make this work. Take me just a second here because I have to move my camera around. All right. And it's going to be a little bit out of focus, so we will may have to try this a couple times. 3, 2, 1. We'll say it didn't work. All right, let's see here. Part of this, as you can see, is I don't have a lot of light. Let me try this. There we go. Okay, so there we go. It's in focus now. Try this again. Calibrate that cap transmitter. 1, 0. Oh, and of course I missed there. Let's try it again. Okay, so see, I'm going to go. There we go. That's the one where it hits. So it's coming down, then it hits, and it starts to come back up. So the second that it hits is right there. I'm going to select the photo shown. I'm going to say it took 5 milliseconds to process the fat cap signal. That's not surprising. I'm running software right now that is working my computer very heavily because I'm doing the webinar. It's slower than normal. So it actually is going to adjust that value now to 5. See, now it says 5. Now, I don't actually want it to stay 5 because my computer's actually not that slow. It's just that I'm running this this software to be able to show you guys what's going on for the webinar. I don't have my laser set up, so I can't show that to you, but it's very, very similar. What you're going to do is line the lasers up with the end of the camera so that you can see exactly when a book works best, like a big textbook, exactly when that textbook breaks the line. So you would swing the book in front of the camera. Similarly, you would scroll backward and forward until that book was dead on, and it will set that setting here, this one, for you. I hope that, does that answer that question? Let me know, Eric, if you had any more questions about that. Guys, that is all I have. There are a couple things in here. Hard reset of the camera, just resets the camera. Link test between the transmitter and receiver, just make sure that they're working. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. You can play with that on your own. USB diagnostic info just tells you how fast your camera's running. Yeah, we are good there. You can view and edit EVT data. If you click this, shows this here. It's really nice. Lets you modify your EVT information. Oh yeah, thanks, Bobby. One more thing. We have a website where you can go, and I'll admit it's a little bit behind right now. You can go and get videos that explain quickly most of what I've just shown you. The idea is we wanted somebody to be able to get up and running really fast. It doesn't go into the details. It's not as complete as what I just did, but it helps you get up and running. You can access that by going to PhotoVision Online Training. It's going to take you straight to learningits.com. And learningits.com is going to have a series of videos. It'll take you through everything. If you need to train a staff member, Learning ITS is going to be up to date. It is behind right now. That is not normal. It's been a couple of weeks that our CEO has been ill. That's caused some trouble, so we're a little behind. I profoundly apologize for that. But here you can log in. You can make your own account if you don't have one, and you can watch videos of everything that I just showed you. That's all I have. You guys are awesome. Thank you very much for taking the time to be here. I hope that this was helpful. If we've missed anything, email us, techsupport@innovativetimingsystems.com. Call us. Option 4 is for tech support. You can also always call me or email me at blake@innovativetimingsystems.com.